Welcome to the Rise to the Challenge podcast. Joining today, she's the founder of Heart Metrics, keynote speaker, podcast host, leadership and career coach. It's Michele Delgado. How are you doing today, Michele?
I'm doing fabulous. How are you, Alex?
Doing
Nice to be here.
We're so excited to have you on the show to talk about your rise to the challenge. What we like to do with all our guests is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what did you like doing growing up?
Where am I from? So born and raised in New York, Long Island, to be specific. What did I like to do? Well, I wasn't a girly girl growing up. I was definitely more of a tomboy. So, putting salt on slugs after a good rain was always exciting. Creating your own go-karts out of whatever we had, broken sleds, was athletic growing up. Loved snow days because where my high school was, we had huge hills. So we used to, take the whatever sled we had or garbage can top and slide down those hills. So, that was me growing up. Left Long Island at a fairly young age and never went back really. Stayed in New York for a while and now in New Jersey.
When you were building those go-karts out of sleds, did it give you like creative mind? Like, ooh, I can create something that maybe is not not normal, but like you can't just go out and buy that. You're going to put your own spin and touch to it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was probably half built. And then it was, if it wasn't really functioning, we would figure out ways to make it function as best as possible. But yes, it was definitely creative juices. And I'm a stick figure artist. I am, but I do like creativity. So there's that. During the pandemic, I think everybody, came up with a new hobby. Can't even talk today. Hobby. And so I started candle making. So I've always been that, what can we make? What can we put together to make something else?
I had that same growing up. Like I'm always creative, even today, like creative, like trying to think outside the box, the things that like are not people aren't doing and being creative. And I think that just shows a lot of skills and talent in that individual because they're not focused on normal things. They're like, what can we do different? And I love that go-kart sled. I mean, especially with growing up in Missouri, we get snow and it's like, I wish I had that. That's like the new ATV or snowmobile, basically.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Driving that around.
Yeah.
You mentioned salt on slugs. And when you said that, I'm very curious. Is that a New York thing? Is that a normal thing?
I don't know. I don't know that if you didn't have them there, but after a good rain, these in Long Island, these gross looking worms would come out. They were slugs. They were very fat. And our thing was, it was kind of torturous when you think about it. We put salt on them and watch them kind of do their thing or curl up, just like we would take jars in the summertime and catch fireflies or, lightning bugs as they call them, or we would catch, what are the other ones that would try and catch butterflies? But yeah, it was always something like that we did.
You talked about living in Long Island. Do you feel that the things you learned about yourself in Long Island you utilize today, or were you trying to kind of separate that identity? Like some people, if they're from Florida, they're typically acting like they're from Florida and things like that. Do you feel you have that Long Island in you when you were growing up?
It's funny you say that because I will be proud to say that I grew up in Long Island. My mother did the right thing by having us go, moving to a good neighborhood where we had good schools and good community, safe environment, etc. So I'm proud and happy about that. But people who stay in Long Island or who are lifers have a really strong accent. And when I tell people I'm from Long Island, they go, "Oh, you don't have the accent." I said, "I try very hard not to." I left Long Island. I stayed in New York for quite some time and I have good memories of it, but it's not something that I could say I have a love of roots, what I mean? That gave me a foundation. It probably did, obviously, because I did go to good schools there and everything. But yeah, I never looked back after I left.
Growing up, did you have any person in your life that was a motivation, inspiration for you?
Um, my mom was we were a single mom. My mom was a tough one. I don't think I saw or recognized or acknowledged the inspiration and all the qualities that she had and she instilled in me
Mhm.
until much later. So I'd have to say that she was my person, even though I didn't realize it at the time.
You mentioned at 18 you left
Yep.
your home.
Yep.
Leading up to that, what was going on? What was those challenges that you were facing?
Um, a lot. I had my mom was a school teacher in the same town. So it was, and for me to go to the same junior high where she taught would have been really challenging. So
Mhm.
it was best, and I'm glad she did it. We had the opportunity to go to a different junior high school. And so I went to a different junior high school. I had different friends from elementary school, et cetera. So there was that loss a little bit because, you're now rivals, if you will,
Yep.
until you get into high school. Um, at that time, where I grew up in Baldwin, it was predominantly white, and my junior high was predominantly white and predominantly 99% Jewish. And I am a Latina woman. So how I felt on the inside didn't match who I was on the outside. I associated with who I was with during junior high. When I got to high school, it was like, oh, no, 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 stop. You don't belong with this crowd. You belong with a different crowd. So it was like I had to separate again. So I definitely dealt with racism at a young age at that point. Up until that point, I knew there were people of different colors and backgrounds, but it never impacted me until I got to high school.
Did that hurt your experience of growing up being a kid because things were changing so much and you couldn't just be yourself because of strict rules and
Oh
guidelines?
yeah, absolutely. I was I the influences of the music I listened to, the people who I hung out with, how I behaved was all outside noise. It
Mhm.
had nothing to do with me being me. It was who do I associate with so I can fit in, and that was definitely a struggle. Um, then also having a single mom who was huge in education. She was an educator in the town. Um, we didn't have the best of relationship as I got older. Like most teenagers, we rebel, and you have your own thoughts and things. So living at home was not easy as I got into later years of high school. And so by the time I left high school, I left home. I survived. I had a very good friend who I'm still extremely close to, who I kind of lived in her house for a couple of weeks. Nobody knew. Her
Wow.
parents had no idea. um, I was always there kind of thing. But you know, I did that for a while, and then I worked jobs that I needed to work. I did what I needed to do to survive. Got a job. I went to college for, part-time, did what I needed to do to get some education in me. I moved out on my own. I had my own apartment when I was 19 years old, got another job, didn't have a car on Long Island. Not having a car is pretty hard.
Yeah.
So I just, bus, hey, who can give me a ride to work today? That kind of thing. Um, so yeah, it was definitely a rocky start to a young adult life.
Did you have a dream job that you were wanting? Like say that if high school wasn't those challenges that you were faced
Yeah.
and you had that dream goal that you were going for, what would have that been for you?
Well, actually, I did have my dream job. Maybe not necessarily the specifics
Mhm.
at that young age, but there was a time when my mother had a friend who, my mother was a school teacher, so summer times she was off. So in Long Island, many people, not uncommon for people to have homes with swimming pools.
Mhm.
So it was like, okay, let's go and hang out at so and so's house at a swimming pool. And one of my mother's friends was a travel agent. It was I think it was a side hustle. I don't remember, but she was a travel agent. And back in those days, she was sitting at her pool on her phone taking reservations.
Wow.
Everything was handwritten because there was no computers like you go on now and you book whatever you want. So I was like, Mom, what is she doing? What is she doing? And she was like, oh, she's working. I'm like, working by a pool and you're not a lifeguard? Like, wait, tell me more, kind of thing. And when she explained to me what she was doing and everything, the one fortunate thing is that my mother loved to travel. And so when we had the opportunity, we would go away for holidays. In fact, we used to go to the Dominican Republic. That's where my grandparents lived, in this, untouched beach, Sosua beach, right outside of Puerto Plata. And my friends were going to Orlando, and I was jealous. Like, they're going to Orlando, they're going to go on rides, and here we are going to a beach where 8 o'clock the electricity turns off and you need flashlights. How awesome is that now? But as a kid, that's not really ideal.
Mm-hmm.
So coupled with that, and then watching this person work by a pool, I said, I want to be a travel agent. I want to work and travel. And so I did. I actually went to travel school much later. I had a different career before that. And I worked in travel, both corporate and leisure, for 30 years. So I did have my dream job.
That's awesome. And I always, when I ask that question, people will look back and say, well, I wish it didn't happen to me right away. I mean, some people was like, oh, I want to be an MLB athlete. Well, maybe it didn't take them right away to it, but they can eventually get there. But even for you, when you said you wanted to be a travel agent, but it didn't happen till later, you still were going for that dream goal. It just took you to a different route. Because I always told myself, I'm going to be a game show host. That's what I wanted to be growing up. Well, I'm not really game show hosting now, but I'm hosting something.
You're hosting something.
I get that feel and that excitement just doing this.
Yeah.
And so it just took me multiple years until I finally got there. So I love that when you mentioned about the travel agency, that you still got there, because that just shows a rise to the challenge where it didn't happen right away, but you worked to get to that spot.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, today you talk about vision boards and manifestation and all of that stuff. And I remember when I was working in one of the positions I had, I knew I wanted to lead others. I knew I wanted to be mentoring others. And so I visioned what that would look like. And then I remember a time when I was in a middle management. So I was a supervisor, and I said, I want my own office. I want an office. And I remember working through it, and I said, what does it look like? Well, I have to have a window, and I have to have this. And so it didn't happen right away, but manifestation does work.
Yeah.
It really does.
After 18, when you were couch surfing, moving, changing, a lot of changes were happening. Did it feel overwhelming? Did you feel like, I give up, I can't handle this anymore? Or did it bring a sense of power in you that I can do this, even with all these challenges? I'm not going to let it stop me.
I'm thinking back to my first apartment that I had. I have to say, even with being, having the tough road, I've always had a good circle around me. I've always had people who support. So yeah, there's the highs and the lows, but I think I went on automatic in some way. Like, I'm a survivor.
Yep.
When I had my own apartment and I was working, and I needed to make sure I had bus fare to get to and from work, because if I didn't go to work, I didn't, it wasn't like I could have free for all of not getting paid, of getting paid. And so meals were limited sometimes, it's one meal, but it wasn't like I said, oh my God, I'm going to starve to death. It's okay. How do I make this meal last for three, how do I make this meal work for 3 times for the day? I always had a good circle of friends and love around me. Even though I was kind of estranged from my mom for a while, I knew I was going to survive.
Were you ever open with your family, not besides your mom, but like grandparents, uncles, cousins, siblings, any of those individuals, about your journey or what was going on in your life?
Yeah. So when I left home, I'm trying to think, my sister at the time was, I think she was abroad or on her own. And, I didn't really confide in her. She knew that there was challenges because, my mother was tough. She was raising two girls and on her own and had her own challenges. And I'm sure she dealt with her own biases or what have you. But my grandparents, unfortunately, they were in the Dominican Republic and they passed away 23 days apart. I think I was in still junior high or high school. So they were gone. My aunt and uncle were in Florida. Like everybody was kind of spread out. And so I was very tight-lipped, like to the rest of the family. So my family became my close friends who I relied on quite a bit. Yeah.
And there's definitely people out there that their friends are family to them. I mean, even for me,
100%.
like our stories are different, but I don't have siblings. And so my friends, I call them brothers because I talk to them constantly every day and they know so much about me. But I viewed them as family because
yeah,
do anything for me, I would do anything for them just like family would.
Yeah. Like the woman who I couch surfed with, we talk pretty regularly. We see each other. We text a lot. She is like the sister. She is a sister. I mean, we've known each other for over 50 years. So I just dated myself there, but yeah, I'm proud to say it, but we are that close. She's a ride or die for sure.
Was there a job that you had that you felt like I'm comfortable doing this? Big part of your story is corporate America and work.
Yeah.
And you talked about 30 years with the travel agency. When did that finally feel like I like what I'm doing? I am enjoying that job.
I'll say one word, which you're going to have hell and back in any job you have. There's no escaping that. But when you get affirmation from your leaders or affirmation from your team that they rely on you and you could be their rock, there's no better feeling than that. There really isn't. And so when I can bring joy to somebody else in the role that they do, and I can have an impact, a positive impact, that's when it feels good for me.
I love hearing that because that's a lot of people sometimes take that for granted. Like, oh, saying something good to a person that could make someone's day, like encouraging them or appreciative for the work that they do. Was that in like a leadership position or was that like working on a project and everyone's kind of at the same level, but you took that kind of leader role on that project?
Someone said it the other day, and I think this kind of is the characteristics that I got from my mom. I'm bossy and bitchy sometimes. So I think I take that lead. And I did it at a young age. I was always like, okay, where are we going? What are we doing? Come on, we have to do this. We have to go here. We have to do this. I was always that person. So even when I wasn't officially a leader, I was always that person to say, well, what are we doing? Well, why don't we, and always bringing along the ideas and things like that. I can remember a time when in the travel industry, I led a team and we had a pod. And so there was like 6 or 7 of us and we would be working like dogs. I mean, it was just so busy. And I could see that everybody's kind of stressed. And so I would just like say, stop. And everybody would kind of look up like, what's happening? I say, raise your hand if you're having a good time. And somebody would raise and they were like, oh yeah, we're having, sarcastically. And I'd say, okay, raise both hands if you're having a good time. All right, now shake out those shoulders because you're typing all that time. And so I've always done things to help encourage positivity in the workplace. And so, yeah, I think I've always been that way.
Did it ever get too much for you? Like doing those kind of things? Like you talked about stress and stuff, and a lot of times we see in any workplace, stress can really deteriorate on a person.
Yeah.
And it changes their outcome and it leads them to the path that they didn't want to go down.
Yeah. I think there's two things. There's the stress of, I used to carry it for all of us sometimes because I didn't want to have people fall apart,
Mhm.
and so that there's a lot on my shoulders. And I did that to myself. It wasn't like somebody forced me to. Being in the travel industry, especially on the front lines where you're actively booking reservations and dealing with customers who are in these situations where life may not be so safe. I lived through doing travel in 9/11, 2008, all these milestones of world events, where the safety of that traveler is in your hands to kind of make sure that they're okay. That stress is when you can get really low on yourself because, there's but so much you can do.
Yeah.
So when things are not in your control, I think that's when it gets really hard. The other part of it is, I mentioned racism and what I dealt with in high school. I didn't feel that way in the travel industry. There were so many people who looked like me. I had clients from all over the world. That conversation just was, that noise was not in my ears at all until I started to become more aware. Like when I was doing some account management, I had a client situation who spoke to my boss we were in a meeting. He spoke to my boss about me and third party as if I wasn't there.
Oh.
That was probably the hardest. I mean, I still remember it and it's years later. That was probably the hardest low point in my travel career, when I had somebody do that to me. And then that's when it kind of came back, the radar came back, like, oh, this does exist.
Yeah. Did
Yeah.
that colleague that person told, were they supportive of you? Did they like go to bat for you, or did they kind of
Well,
just let it
my
happen?
boss at the time, and we still stay in touch, he definitely had some, I mean, he had to tread lightly because it's a
Yeah.
huge client, but he definitely had some uh concerning words for him in a sense. And when we left that room, I was with my direct report. So it was not only my boss, but then somebody who reported to me, I was feeling embarrassed, right? Um, they both, I mean, I was shooken to the core. I don't cry easily, but I was definitely in tears. And I think I was tears and just so raged.
Hmm.
They both were very supportive. So I have to say, throughout all my adversities, I've had such an amazing group of inner circle people.
When did you know that it was ready for a new chapter? Or
Oh,
did the chapter end without your control?
yeah. So um, I remember it. I don't remember exact date, but I probably could look it up, but I do remember it, I stayed in the industry, but I moved on from a company that I was with for so long. And the reason for that was I was brought into the office Friday afternoon, let's talk, whatever. Didn't think anything was wrong. And he says, um, we're bringing in somebody else to like kind of be, I'm just paraphrasing the story a little bit to speed it up, but between the two of us, um, and he says, and the reason for that is I just don't have time to mentor you. And I thought,
Oh.
that's like, okay, here's the trash, let's just go throw it out. So I was just like, what? So I thought, so luckily it was on a Friday because I think the rest of the week would have been really, really hard. But that Friday I decided, go home, do what I have to do. And I started immediately looking, and I found another job and I left. And he was like, well, why are you leaving? I was like, I think it's time. The writing's on the wall. I'm not here to step down in this fashion, whatever. Left there, dealt with some other obvious racism situations in another company. And then this was becoming like a pattern now that I was hearing it more in my ears. And I kept saying, is this the story that I'm telling myself? Is this the story that's factual? Like, what are the facts? And there were the facts. So I dealt with that. I stayed there. I left there very briefly. my old boss called me in, solicited me. I went to another company, was very happy there, thought this was going to be the, the last song, retirement kind of phase. And then this thing called the pandemic happened, and it really put a monkey wrench into travel. And so travel became null. It was kind of divorced from the world, I would say. And so me being as active as I am, working as my work ethics that I always follow, I couldn't stay idled. So it was December of 2020 that I had completed 3 coaching certifications. And I did that because I had to validate the work that I was doing, that work that I've done all my life. I've always been a mentor. I've always been the cheerleader for somebody else to inspire. I'm not a best-selling author. I don't have a PhD, but I have wounds, scars, experience, and lots of motivation and passion to help people. And I decided, well, I guess the travel and I are parting ways, and I started my own consulting business.
Was the coaching certification ever on your radar? Was it ever a goal of yours? So it just happened to work out during a time where you couldn't do the travel.
Yeah. I had a mentor. I had a career coach who I worked with, and we are still friends today. We still motivate each other, which is pretty amazing. Again, another inner circle person who just is there in my corner. And he said, do you ever consider consulting? And he connected me with somebody else. She says, oh, I got my coaching certification. I was like, brilliant. Now, the funny part about this is that my mother, after being a school teacher for many years, a very smart woman with lots of degrees, including a PhD, became an executive coach and was very successful at being a coach. That was never a thought at that time, because from a young age, travel was it for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny how now I'm doing not exactly the same work, but I'm doing similar job.
As a coach and speaker, what is the biggest thing it has taught you about yourself?
I would say that one of the things I've recognized, only based on the feedback, is that I have good wisdom, but I also ask great questions. So sometimes most of the time, coaches are a sounding board, right? We ask probing questions so that people can find their answers themselves. So when I first started out, I was like, can I really do this? Because it's different. Consulting, you're giving answers, you're guiding, whatever, and coaching is a little bit different. What I've learned and continue to learn is that you can stay quiet and people will still find the answers.
Yeah.
And sometimes for myself, if I stay quiet long enough, I might find the answer myself. So, there's that. Being a speaker, I spoke a lot when I was in my career as an employee. But I spoke on a subject that I was, knew like the back of my hand, or I was doing a training, I, knew the material. Speaking on a Zoom camera is a very different feel than being in person. And I just had that opportunity to be in person. It was just so rewarding to do that. I think it's even more difficult now to navigate, the screen and everything else. And I won't say that I suffer from perfectionist. I don't have the perfectionist syndrome, but I am hard on myself when things don't go exactly right. Fumbles here and there, okay. But when you walk away and you go, oh, I really bombed that, and I think when you are in front of an audience, there's more grace to do that than when you're on a technical screen. I almost feel like people have the expectation that you should be completely polished. There should be no errors whatsoever, but it happens.
That same thing. I had a previous job where I was the main trainer for the whole state in that topic, and we would do them in person. And you just feel more excitement, and you feel the energy of the people.
Yeah.
And they know that there's a reasoning you're there, and they have to be there. and
Right.
they're just more, they're focused on you. I feel when you're on Zoom or you're doing it over, there's so many distractions because you can even think for us, I can look in so many different directions in my room and just not at the screen, but it can look like I'm still listening. But I think Zoom, you like you said, it has to be so perfect because it's the full attention that you're giving.
Yeah.
And I feel that that's got to change because we're all human. We make mistakes. There's some
Yeah.
things that silence,
Yeah.
but you just got to go with it. Be excited, like
Yeah.
enjoy the opportunity because you never know what you're going to learn. You're going
Yeah.
to learn something completely new.
Yeah.
When you're speaking, do you prefer that the professional topics or the personal topics where you can add your personal journey into that topic?
Um, well, to be honest, I've just started doing a lot more speaking engagements, both for nonprofit and profit. And I I like to pepper in an experience or a story because I think that that's how you're going to relate to somebody.
Yeah.
So I've experienced, I just recently did one on the power of apology. And I talked about how, there was a situation with a friend of mine who's also a client. And so, when we cross those lines, what conversation are we having that day? How does it start out and how does it end up? And I, as I'm telling the story, I can visualize how we were having our conversation and what the feeling was. So I think that having a blend of both is ideal. People don't want just the facts and
Yep.
statistics. And I really am not big on, I know it's important and everything, but I have I'm skeptical about statistics and surveys because how wide did they cast the net? How many people answered? They say 75%. Okay, 75% of what? 100 people or 2 million people? That's a big difference.
Yep. We start asking even more questions just on the statistics that they tell us.
Yeah,
We're like,
exactly.
we need a little bit more details on what you're asking.
Right.
That's why I hate surveys. Well, except it's the like Family Feud, 100 people they surveyed. Okay, where are these 100 people from? What?
Well, clearly you can tell by their answers they are not from a main city sometimes.
I love those answers because you're
Yeah.
like, who? Okay, what were they thinking at that
Right.
time about that answer? That's the
Right.
game showing me.
Yeah. No, exactly. It's like when Steve Harvey asks 100 women and then he asks the guys and the guys come up with these answers. It's like, listen, he said 100 women, not 100 people.
Steve Harvey is so amazing. He is just a genius when it comes to that. As we have something in common as podcast hosts, talk about that experience on creating the show, because that's usually a fun topic I love hearing from my guests is if they're in the podcast world. How did you create your show and what was the mission behind it?
Great question. I love this story actually because it's still new to me. So I had started to get invited to be a guest on different shows. And so I think I had done about 2, maybe 3, I don't even remember. But I had done some moderating, I had done on Zoom, and I did some, thought leader kind of conversation. And so I said, I have 2 good friends who have podcasts. And I said, maybe I should throw my hat in the ring and try this out. And my goal was to do this for fun, to see, I don't know if I'm going to like it, if it's just going to fit in, how will it work, and I'm very fortunate. Again, I have amazing support, inner circle people who help me. And so I said, all right, let's do it. Let's see what happens. Let's do a series of 4 or 5 episodes. And if it bombs, if it's, if I don't enjoy it, forget it. I'm not doing it anymore. No one's going to know. So I did my first series starting in June of this year. And I had a whole style. So I said, I'm going to do it as a series. And then I'm going to bring all these people back together who they've never met before on one show together so that we can have a collaboration of with the same questions to see how everybody felt about it and talk about game show. We actually did questions on there like a game show. So it was pretty cool. So that was Imposter Syndrome series. Then I thought, oh, this is really cool. So I said, I'm going to do it as a series. I don't know any other podcast I'm aware of that does it like a series. Like they have one topic of conversation, you just have different guests going on. Well, I invite guests to be on these series based on their story, based on the subject, and group them together. So that's how I've been doing it. So right now, my series is about leadership with patience and grace. I've had some amazing guests on the show. I've been doing it weekly. So far, I've only missed 1 week because we had some hiccups with things, but I figured out how to correct that. So now if I have a week lag or somebody cancels and you have to rush to get it all prepared and do all that stuff, I'll just do a monologue of 3-4 minutes and plug it in. So it's been a lot of fun. And my goal now is to at least make it to the 1 year anniversary and then bring back, favorite guests, favorite stories, and have some fun with that.
I love that. I love that you have that goal because they all say, "Oh, you ain't good. You're going to last only 10 episodes and then you're going to quit." And I'm thinking to myself, I'm over 200 episodes now. I think that note should be long gone. I think I'm in it for the end. So now
Yeah,
how
yeah.
far I can go now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm up to, I think 24 or something like that, 24 episodes, but I have about 75 on, total it'll be 75 on deck. So I have guests booked up until spring of next year.
Wow. See,
Yeah.
that conversation, a lot of people listening, they're probably all thinking when they hear this episode, like, when did they make this? And I always say, each guest or each host has their own strategy. Not one person should be able to tell them this is how you're supposed to do it because all of our lives are so different. We have full-time jobs and
Yep.
we do this because we enjoy doing it. It's not a job. Sometimes it feels like it, but it's a fun job to me. But we want to enjoy it and want it to be our own personality. Like, why
Yep.
do we want it to be so scripted or it's modeled after someone else? Because that
Yep.
doesn't, like, if someone told me this is what you have to do, this is how you're going to edit it, you're going to do it this, that's not me. My
Yeah.
family, my friends know me, and they are going to be able to tell that is not you when they.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I looked at it when I first started doing it. I said it would be a great way to just kind of bring awareness to who I am as a leader, as a coach, and as a entrepreneur who's not this big brand household name. I'm not looking to become a celebrity. There's lots of room for them to do that. I'm just enjoying myself, and it's a good way to plant seeds to
Yes.
inspire others and to be inspired. I have met some of the most amazing people with their stories. It's just been, some of them, when you first meet them, they pull at your heartstrings. And then when they share more, it's just more of the same. So yeah, it's been a great ride and I enjoy it. It sometimes becomes a lot of work because of the scheduling and all of that
Yeah.
other good stuff. But you know what? When it gets to that point where I need to have somebody help me, then I will do that. But right now I'm doing it all.
During this journey we've been on with you, we've talked about your career, but I want to talk a little bit about the personal, who is Michele? What are
Yeah.
some goals that you have for yourself that you're hoping to accomplish personally, or what is on that list of things that you want to accomplish soon?
Okay. I'm going to start with something really crazy. It's been on the bucket list. It sounds ridiculous, but on the bucket list, I have to see Coldplay in concert.
Oh, that's a
Full
good
disclosure. So anyone who knows them, who's listening and wants to give me some tickets, I'm in the tri-state area. I'll be going, I'm happy to go to the concert. So I missed the opportunity last time I was in town, but that's one of the fun things. Somebody just asked this question recently. I went through the highs and lows of weight back in my younger days. And so probably for the last 15 years or so, I've kept it off and optimal health. So I work out, I try and eat right. I don't always do that. I mean, I eat junk food like the rest of us, but I health is important to me. Staying fit and feeling good. I don't want to feel like I can't move.
Mhm.
The minute you start to have that restriction, it becomes harder. And as soon as you start to have negative thoughts, then it's just going to keep spiraling. So that's that. Um, I just want to be able to have the time, and being an entrepreneur helps that, to spend time with family. We have a new granddaughter in the family, so she's just a huge spot in our hearts, and so we love spending time with her, and being there for our children. So that's family has definitely become more of a priority than what it was when I was working, because it was all about the work, it was all about the money, it was all about the work, all about the money, and oh yeah, joy came later. And now it's like it's all about the joy, it's all about family. Oh, and money comes later. So I've flipped those. So those are some really important goals. I mean, I definitely want, I started my business in January of 2021. That was a building year. I had some really great wins, but I'm still building and still wanting to create opportunities where I can work smarter, not harder,
Mm-hmm.
and enjoy, and getting back to travel. We haven't been traveling since, the pandemic. I know people have been on planes doing this, doing that. And, it would be nice to do that again, but we're fine doing what we're doing right now, road trips and enjoying our family time.
Where's that next road trip to? Where do you want to go?
Uh, I would like to get on a plane and go to the islands, to be honest with you.
I'm there.
Our favorite island is Puerto Rico, to go there and sit on a beach. It's we make friends very quickly when we're on vacation. So I would love to go back to the Caribbean. But if not that, there's some states that I really, when I was in travel and I got a chance to go to, I really enjoy. I love Chicago. I wouldn't go in the wintertime, but we have enough cold where we are right now. But I love Chicago, and I love the Midwest. It's just, there's something special about it. And then Florida, because I have family there. So those would be a couple of spots. There's some other bigger dreams, but for right now, if somebody says, where do you want to go right now, it would be like, get me to a beach.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm like,
Yeah,
find me water, get me on the beach. I just want
right.
to relax and enjoy.
Exactly, with a good book.
The final question I'll ask you, for someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
One thing that I tell clients today, and close circle friends, because I do lead a women's circle group, and it's amazing. We've been doing it a year and a half together, and it's been great. Celebrate every win, no matter how small. If you're waking up and you just have that feeling of, I can't do this, I don't want to do this, and not like in a end your life kind of way. I don't mean that, but just like you don't even want to get out of bed kind of thing. Do things for you first.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard when you have children, I understand that, but if you could at least even meditate for 5 minutes in the morning, turn the phone over. I don't expect anyone to turn their phones off, but we are addicted to these devices. They're like an appendage of our bodies. Turn it over and don't watch it, because that noise will start your day whatever way you want. Somebody's doing this, oh, I should be doing that, and then it spirals from there. So the first thing is, do something for yourself first when you wake up. Celebrate every win that you do, that you have for the day, no matter how small, and then look at those wins at the end of the day, because you'll be pretty proud of yourself, of all those little things that you've accomplished. Yep. Miracles do happen. They may not seem like it, and we kind of poo-poo them and say, oh, that was just luck. But if we look at it as a positive, and that you were there to help and create that, that's pretty powerful.
Well, Michele, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. You're inspiring so many people, and we're excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Well, I'm excited too. bring on 2023, right?
Yeah.